Piko
Hammer!
Don't swing a hammer at your camera, kids. That's bad.
Also, wouldn't recommend swinging a hammer if it's got an axe on the other end of it, but that's not the topic of today's episode.
Yeah, we're not talking about the Piko axe. We're talking about the Piko hammer.
I love how you made that joke.
Could you imagine an axe that, like, as you're trying to chop down a tree, it just makes the Piko sound?
Boink!
Dude, the guys at the lumberyard looking real tough, just swinging their axes.
It's time to go out and chop some trees. Squeak, squeak, squeak.
Or doing like the classic manly thing of, I'm gonna go chop some firewood in the back. And it's this dude shirtless, and he just swings the axe, and it's just... as it just chops his wood in half.
And then Amy the hedgehog comes over with her Piko hammer. She's just like, what's going on, boys? And then just, I don't know, hammers the heck out of him or something like that. And that's the segue.
That's right, because we are talking about not Amy Rose. We are talking about her hammer. A Piko hammer. Amy Rose's Piko hammer.
Known by many names. Could just be the Piko hammer. Could just be the hammer. Could be just Amy's hammer or otherwise. Or the Piko hammer. As I believe Amy has referred to this officially once.
Yeah, and it partially depends on which Amy we're talking about. Because Amy has existed in a lot of different forms of media, so there might be different names depending on the different media. Where did it all start? Fighting. Specifically, Sonic Fighters. We've talked about that quite a bit. That was the first time we saw the Piko hammer.
That's fair. At least in its, first iteration? Its first form?
Yeah.
And even going way back, and this is sort of just a small sidebar, the original hammer actually originated in Tails' adventure game. It was called the Pecan hammer, and it also looked vastly different, and it wasn't wielded by Amy either. But we're talking about Piko, and that first official appearance is in Sonic the Fighters.
And apparently the reason for this, they were trying to go for like a tomboy vibe with classic Amy, and they thought having Amy use a hammer would help like get that image across, which I'm gonna be real, I never saw like classic Amy as like tomboy vibes.
Me neither. If anything, I just saw her as kind of, admittedly, she didn't really have much substance to me as a kid. Like I never really noticed too much about Amy. I was just like, oh, she's the one who just follows around Sonic. There's not much else there.
Yeah, I think.
But there's a meta narrative to be had there.
I also feel like with the tomboy vibe, like that didn't mesh with me, or I didn't get that image as a kid because I didn't grow up on like with like classic Amy. I just went like the normal modern Amy, like in Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, which that's a very different design. And I feel like with that iteration of Amy, they went a very different direction.
Yeah, and even in regards to design too, in specifics to the hammer has gone through a number of different design changes over the years.
Oh my
and
gosh.
It seems to more or less retain its same core functionality, but across various different forms and also various different medias, as you were kind of alluding to earlier.
In general, it is a handle that the handle's actually changed quite a bit from iteration to iteration, but the constant has been basically like a red centerpiece and then the two ends are yellow. That is like the most consistent thing. And even then, that has changed.
And like one of the things that I want to think about is, I mean, think of how a hammer works. It hits.
Yeah, there's not much.
It's blunt force, right?
There's no instruction manual on the hammer I am holding. It is literally whack.
That's fair. If we think about the Piko hammer, and one of the reasons why it's called that is the sound that it makes, Piko being the sound like the little toy hammers and stuff like that make, it's very obvious from the first design of the Piko hammer, the one that appears in Sonic the Fighters, that it kind of looks like the heads of the hammer are accordion-like, they're spring-like.
Yeah.
They look very much like the toy hammer that would make the sound if you hit for it. Which, when I think about it, doesn't make it that powerful a weapon unless there was like a solid piece of metal on the inside of it, which would correspondingly make it not make the sound when it came down and struck your enemy. As the Piko hammer evolves over time, it seems to get farther and farther away from a shape that would imply the sound that it makes. Because it seems to go forward, it almost is like the hammer goes from accordion to almost whoopee cushion-like to then like a drum. And those all make vastly different sounds, at least in my experience.
And it's kind of funny just talking about like its toy-like origins. Like we've seen this hammer used so many times, and it is the old reliable. But apparently in Sonic Adventure, it says that the hammer is not that strong.
Is there like a quote that you got?
Though the Piko hammer has proven itself itself a capable weapon, it is said in Sonic Adventure that it is not so powerful. It could just be that they've evolved the weapon over time, almost like a joke to, no, this is her actual primary, and this will mess you up if you get hit by it.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that it appears that the strength of the weapon corresponds to whatever purpose for the plot that it is supposed to be used for. Like, Amy in Sonic Adventure 2 Battle is a side character at best. So I guess it makes sense that the hammer is not super powerful.
Well,
but like when she's a main character in a game like Sonic Heroes, the hammer does some damage.
Well, I feel like they try to use that to explain like why she couldn't use it to completely destroy Zero. That line was from Sonic Adventure. Okay. So she's running away from Zero.
Oh, okay. I also see an image here on the wiki page of one of the outlier designs of the hammer in Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, where it looks like she's taking a yellow-handled, red-tipped hammer and attempting to break a steel box, I assume unsuccessfully.
That iteration of the hammer, I believe it only appears like that if you try and do certain moves. It only appears when Amy is doing the spin jump or the somersault.
It seems like for the hammer, there's like one main track of designs where it's got that handle that you were talking about, it's got the red core, and it's got the yellow heads to it. And apparently this kind of evolves in 3 stages. There's the first one that looks a little bit more flexible, the second one that gets a little bit more cylindrically like, and then the third one, which to me just looks like a drum on a stick. Then we have some offshoot versions that appear in other games, such as Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, in Sonic Heroes, in Sonic Rush, and as well in Sonic and the Black Knight. And all of them seem to have the common factor of a yellow handle and red caps, except for the one in Sonic and the Black Knight, where it keeps that red handle, yellow caps, but it's got some beautiful, like, Celtic embellishments all over it.
And funny enough, in the multiplayer of that game, where Amy is a playable character, and in my opinion, one of the strongest characters in multiplayer. She's the only character who uses a hammer. Weird, because you would expect Tails, who's a blacksmith in that universe, to use a hammer. But he doesn't.
A piece of me wants to know what a medieval hammer is like, and it's mostly war hammers. So you could say that in Sonic and the Black Knight, that's Amy's Piko Piko Warhammer.
The Piko Piko Warhammer, which is a perfect counter to King Arthur, because her ult like is a full counter to his, and his is insanely strong. I know I've talked about it previously, either on one of our channels or even on the podcast, because his was like an AoE lightning storm from his sword.
Ridiculous.
And Amy's is something very similar, except hers is stronger.
Well, isn't Amy in Sonic and the Black Knight the Lady of the Lake?
Yes.
Or somebody else?
Except
I think she's another special character in the story.
Yeah, she is the Lady in the Lake. But I don't remember if in the multiplayer, if you're playing as the Lady in the Lake Amy, or if you're playing as Amy.
That's fair.
Because she kind of has an appearance at the end of the game. Because I don't know if you know how that adventure ends.
Outside of the story.
Yeah.
That's outside of the storybook, right?
Yeah. Basically, Sonic is telling this story to Amy as an excuse of why he missed their date. Incredible. And then she pulls out the hammer and he's like, no, Amy, please.
I believe the quote you're looking for exactly is, "Yikes! No, Amy, wait! Put down that hammer!"
Thank you.
Quoted at the top of the page.
Yep. She is terrifying with that hammer.
Oh yeah. Expanding more on the various different designs of not necessarily the Piko hammer or the Piko hammer or just Amy's hammer. Quick note on that. Evidently, there was only one time that the hammer's name has been quoted correctly, and it is by Amy herself. And at least on one occasion, and it was one of the Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games, the announcer announces it incorrectly as, I think, just the Piko hammer. So nobody can even call this thing the correct name. I think it's kind of funny. Other forms of this hammer include the upgraded version, the long hammer, which takes on a green version. There is, on a few occasions, we have a very, very large Piko hammer, like in what looks like a Sonic Advance game based off of the sprite.
I believe
her hammer is like...
I believe that...
What do you think that is?
Okay, the large hammer, that is from Sonic Rush, apparently.
Yeah, actually, the file name is Piko Hammer Larger Rush.
The other ones are from Sonic Advance 3, which that makes sense because that had like that partner mechanic that we talked about previously.
Yeah,
so I guess like if Amy's your partner, then you can use her hammer as other characters, and they all have like their own versions of it, which is actually really cool.
And these little hammer designs are cute.
Sonic's looks like the most similar because it looks like it's got like that red base, and it might have like gold caps instead of yellow. Tails is like a blue base, but like orange caps.
And it's got some stars all over it as well.
Makes sense because that fits his color scheme. Knuckles, his is a green base with red caps. And
it's got a spike on top of it.
Yeah, which looks like another version of it that we'll talk about later. And then Cream has one that it's basically like all like a solid orange color.
Yeah. Other hammer designs include, but are not limited to, the design that we see in Sonic Boom, casually referred to as Amy's hammer, with no mention of the piko. It looks a little bit more tool-like. It's got a little leather around the hilt. It's got yellow caps with a lot of pink color schemes going on with it.
Okay, there's actually a lot of versions of Amy's hammer. I guess in certain games you can like upgrade the hammer, because the one we have here, like this is the one that she uses, like the original like Sonic Boom game, the TV show, and even in the comics. There are like variants, as we see in Sonic Boom Fire and Ice. There's a bronze hammer, a silver hammer, a gold hammer, a platinum hammer, a titanium hammer, and a Ragnium hammer.
The heck is Ragnium?
It is a substance that appears in Sonic Boom, a rare mineral.
And apparently, in order to wield hammers and get upgrades, you need these hammer parts.
You need 60 hammer parts for this Ragnium hammer. I don't have the context of Sonic Boom Fire and Ice, so I don't know how many that is. I'm going to assume it's a lot, because I'm assuming this is like the highest tier hammer possible.
That's what I imagine. Also, did you know that apparently the hammer is insured?
Yes, I wanted to say that unlike the Piko hammer, Amy's hammer is insured, except when someone else is using it, which makes sense.
Quote, season 2, episode 89 of the Sonic.
I love that there's a quote for that.
That's so funny.
You know, hey man, your heroes who have their tools and weapons, they need to make sure they're protected.
Yeah. I mean, that would make sense, right? Like, what if something happens to your Ragnium hammer? I gotta imagine, what insurance company in their right mind would offer an insurance policy for a hammer?
What insurance companies even exist in the world of Sonic Boom? I don't know.
For comedic effect, I'm sure there's at least 3.
Oh yeah, there's gotta be like that kind of decent one, like a shady one, and then just your normal like, hey, hi, I'm the insurance guy.
It's got to be 3, because comedy works in 3s, and it would be awkward if the 2 insurance companies just offered a policy for each other. So it makes sense that they offer it in 3. So A to B, B to C, C to A.
Yep.
Just in case somebody comes in contact with the hammer, that company B decided to offer an insurance policy. Like this, I don't know if you played a lot of Sonic Advance 2, but there is a robot in the game called Piko who wields their own version of Amy's Piko hammer that, I quote, is described as a clown bot who rips off Amy's style. And oddly enough, this particular hammer design is unique in that it's got that red handle, it's got the red core, just like the other ones do, and yellow accordion bits, but the final caps are red, and it's got a little bit on top where the stick seems to kind of protrude through. So it's, in terms of the other hammer designs that we've seen, it's kind of unique in a way. And I wouldn't say that it is a direct riff-off of any of Amy's hammer implementations. It's kind of a combination of a couple of them.
Yeah, because again, that bit on top, that's kind of similar to the spike on Knuckles' hammer. And then like the accordionness of it, that's its own thing, because it's a goofy clown bot, but that's weird.
Yeah.
I didn't know
but
that.
That's like a callback. That's like a callback to the original design in Sonic the Fighters, where it maintained that more accordion-like structure. Now, again, this is I can only really tell the accordion type structure from the piece of art that I sent you, but in the sprites of the game, it's a little less obvious that it has that structure to it. It just kind of looks like, I don't know.
Yeah, because that level of detail would be hard to convey in such a limited sprite. Cameron, have you heard of Rose Woman?
What?
Have you heard of Rose Woman?
Like as a concept? I can't say I'm familiar with Rose Woman specifically.
So remember, I know we've talked about this, when Sonic did a crossover with Mega Man?
Yeah, wait a minute.
Wily and Eggman captured some of our heroes and turned them into like the masters that you would have to fight in the Mega Man games. So essentially like roboticized, but they have a different appearance and different naming structure.
Yeah.
So we have antagonists like Shadow Man, Knuckles Man, Tails Man, and Rose Woman.
Look at these.
Rose Woman looks so cool. I love all of these designs, by the way. There's more. There's Rouge Woman. There's like Vector Man, Espio Man.
Dude, these designs are... I don't want to go down this rabbit hole because it's not the episode, but these designs are so cool.
Oh, man.
But I see why you brought up Rose Woman.
Yeah, because her hands are the hammers. And I love it.
That's great. I love this image of her with the stride being like, I'm about to bust your piko kneecaps. Oh my gosh. Oh, wow, that's great. I love this design, dude. Also, even better because she's got no hands.
Also, apparently, at some point, Mega Man gets that power because I have an image here of Mega Man using Rose Woman's ability. So it would just be her hammer and a paint scheme.
He looks so
because
derpy.
That's how it works in Mega Man, is like when you beat one of these, like we'll just call them like master bots for simplicity's sake. When you beat them, you get their weapon / power, and when you use it, you get a paint scheme change that looks like them and also can use that power.
I guess that is Mega Man.
Yeah,
that is the shtick.
He is the Mega Man. Now he's the Mega Piko Hammer Man.
Well, actually, that kind of acts as a pretty good segue for the various other, like, I guess, ways that Amy uses the piko hammer in general. Like, it's not just for whacking kneecaps, apparently.
Oh, no, she can do more.
First of all, on the design, or I guess function of the hammer, it clearly exists in what we know as hammer space.
Mm-hmm.
It can grow in size, it can shrink in size, depending on the needs of the master, and apparently she can just keep it wherever she keeps it.
She keeps
but she's not using it.
In hammer space. And we've seen that she can materialize the hammer whenever in certain medias. Well, like one of my favorite scenes in Sonic X specifically. She's sad because Sonic has not returned to their world yet. And Eggman is in his ship taunting her. So she takes her hammer, throws it at the ship. It hits and actually dents the ship and embeds itself in it. And and Eggman is just like, oh, what you gonna do now? Your hammer's all the way up here. And she's like, okay, wanna bet? She holds her hand out and another one materializes in her hand. And one of his minions is like, oh God, she's got another one. Mm-hmm. And it pans away. And when it pans back, his ship is covered in dents and piko hammers. She did not stop.
So clearly she's got more than just one, at least in some cases. I like the fact that Amy can use the piko hammer not only as a blunt force object or a play object, depending on the purpose of the hammering. She can also use it to somersault and give herself extra lift.
Oh yeah.
To do flips and stuff like that. And I remember that being a prime concept in Sonic Adventure.
Yep.
Because that was one of her movement mechanics.
Yeah, because that was the big way to get momentum for her, because Amy was a really slow character. She can also do some crazy stuff with this thing, like make small tornadoes, or even like I think a bunch of tornadoes, because that's how you did the pole thing in Sonic Heroes.
You're right, actually. I remember that now. It's also funny to me too that like the wiki page says like the purpose of the hammer is self-defense. And I don't know about you, but I don't think gymnastics in this case is considered self-defense, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah.
So another thing I want to explore is how other versions of Amy function with their own hammer. And we kind of touched on it already with Rose Woman, apparently, and her hammer hands. But what about the other Amy's that exist, like in the Sonic Prime series or even the comic series either?
Like, I know Sonic Prime in the Boz Cage Maze, they have a Amy variant there called Thorn Rose, and her hammer is literally just wood and stone.
That's a pretty powerful hammer.
It's literally just a stick with a giant stone on the back, and I actually love this.
Now my question for you is, do you think that Thorn Rose gets the same amount of mobility that regular Amy would with her hammer of wood and stone as Amy does with her piko? Because I can only imagine, like, I guess if you took that hammer and you swung it down, you'd get a hell of a lot of momentum to swing yourself, but perhaps not take the hammer with you.
Yeah.
I haven't actually watched Sonic Prime, so I don't know if she uses it in the same way.
Yeah, same. I feel like any version of Amy is just crazy strong. If Sonic Adventure is to be believed that the hammer is not that strong, Amy does a heck of a lot of damage with a not very good weapon.
But to be fair, I mean, the amount of damage that you can do with the weapon also depends on the weapon itself. I mean, this one in Sonic Prime is made of stone. It can quite literally crush. It's a freaking rock. But like, there's another version of the hammer. Lycos, have you ever heard of Rosie the Rascal?
You're giving me flashbacks, bro. I don't like her. She scares me. She actually scared me.
I don't know when I first found out about Rosie the Rascal, but I want to say it was when I was younger. And like, this is apparently an alternate universe Mobius version of Amy the Hedgehog. And she's got her own piko hammer, but it is completely unlike any other hammer.
It's got spikes.
It's got spikes on it. It's got a green color scheme. It's got X's on the inside of the little yellow hilt to kind of match her skirt and shirt style. This thing looks like
she makes me uncomfortable. She legitimately scares me because I was reading the comics at this point when she was introduced. We were dealing with Scourge and he popped back to like his universe, and his universe is basically all the heroes that we know and love are villains and vice versa, and Rosie is terrifying because
like,
she like it's very yandere, I think would be the best way to describe her in a nutshell.
I can see that.
Because her introduction is her like trying to tell Scourge she loves him, trying to smash him with the hammer. That is her introduction.
And I mean, take a closer look at that hammer. If you get hit with that, it's not just blunt force trauma. I've got a hole in my stomach.
Dude, yeah, you're gonna get impaled. And also,
that's the word I was looking for.
This picture, I don't like her pose. It looks like she's kind of off balance. And
I mean, maybe it's just because of how heavy that hammer is.
Or it could also kind of reflect the mental state of the user.
Possibly.
I don't like Rosie. I actually want to get off this page. It makes me uncomfortable. I'm getting bad flashbacks.
Something about the way that she's drawn to look at the camera is just unnerving.
Like, there's something about that picture that's just unsettling, and I don't like it.
I can see that. Yeah.
I think there's one more version of this hammer that we want to talk about. It does involve some spoiler stuff, so in case you want to avoid spoiler stuff, you've already been warned. So, Sonic Paramount movies.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that end scene, dude?
Yes, because this was actually one of the things that really stood out to me. If you recall back to our Sonic 3 episode, this was part of my reasoning for one of my theories that time travel was going to be a thing, because this hammer is a lot more mechanical than any other variant.
Oh yeah,
like it's got lights, it flies somehow. I maybe future tech.
No, yeah,
I don't know.
It does, dude. Like I went back and I rewatched the end scene in Sonic 3 where Amy comes in and saves the day from all the metal Sonics that are harassing regular Sonic, and this hammer just comes flying out of nowhere. And unlike if you took an actual hammer and threw it, it had a curved trajectory as it rotated around and swung around and hit all the enemies, almost as if the hammer itself was a homing attack.
Yeah.
Now, if you look at this hammer, it's got like a metal contraption that appears to open on it. It's got those lights. I imagine there's some sort of like engine or something or power source on the inside of it. It is a mechanical marvel.
That would be actually really cool, is if she's like goes to swing and like the back end opens and there's like a jet engine on the inside, giving her even more oomph. Oh, that'd be so cool. I am a sucker for rocket powered weapons. That is so cool. I hope that's a thing.
And also too, like granted we didn't see that much in the end scene, but it didn't look like she pulled that hammer out of nowhere. So it's possible there either is no hammer space for this particular hammer to fit into, or maybe there is hammer space and maybe it'll be a joke in Sonic 4.
Or they could just say, oh, it's future tech, if that is the route they want to go.
This is very fair. This is very fair. I want to see how that hammer gets used, dude.
Yeah.
I'm so looking forward to it.
Amy is a fun character if written well. I've had some forms of media where like she's just kind of like a relatively annoying side character. I kind of felt that was what she was in Sonic Adventure 2, because I was just like, she didn't really contribute much. She was just kind of there. I think that's also me just like, I'm like, oh, why isn't she playable? She was playable in the last game.
Well, at the very least, I think in the Paramount films, like she's going to be playing a more major role because the logo for Sonic 4 has the 4 as the color pink.
Oh, I didn't even know we had a logo for that yet.
Oh yeah, the logo was, if I'm correct in saying, has been officially announced.
Oh, cool. Have we missed anything with the iconic hammer? I would say this thing is iconic. Because if you're doing Sonic and you see a yellow and red hammer, you know who they're referencing. Who else has a hammer like that? And I was gonna say color scheme, but I'm like, actually, they use red and yellow fairly often for a lot of characters.
Yeah. I mean, that was a question I had too. Like, who made the hammer? The hammer has a red and yellow color scheme to it. So is it possible that it's like egg tech?
The problem is we're going off the assumption that it's not mechanical, so I don't think it would be egg tech, because otherwise it would be more like what we see in like the Paramount.
Evidently, we do have an explanation for where the Piko hammer comes from, but it's in the pre-Super Genesis wave Archie comics.
Yeah, I saw it and read a little bit into it, and I'm just like, this is a little weird.
Just for the sake of completeness, at least according to the Archie comics, the reason why Amy has the Piko hammer to begin with is because she used the Ring of Acorns to first of all make herself older, absorbed some of the Ring of Acorns power, was granted some wish-granting abilities, which allowed her to create the Piko hammer out of thin air whenever she wished for it.
And she used the hammer to save the Flickies that were getting harassed by Zero.
So evidently, hammer space is explained by wish-granting powers from a Ring of Acorns, which, now that I realize it, is a ring that we didn't talk about in our ring episode.
Yeah, it was a ring
look
that
at
we
this thing.
missed. I mean, admittedly though, again, this was pre-Super Genesis wave, so the Ring of Acorn, it looks like a ring.
Looks like a ring. I don't see a single acorn anywhere.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping it was like a ring made of acorns, or maybe like acorns were like embedded in it, but it just looks like a normal ring.
We save it for the end of the episode. I'm not convinced.
I think it's a phony ring. A big fat phony.
I mean, to be fair, it's really not that fat. If anything, it's a little oblong. Could just be the angles.
Yeah, angles are weird, especially with circles.
So where do we find ourselves, Lycos? Which end of the hammer are we at? Are we on the blunt end, or are we on the pointing end?
Preferably not the business end, which I think would be the blunt end. I also don't want to get stabbed. Since we've talked about the weapon, do we want to talk about the user? We have not done an Amy episode.
Possibly.
We could also dig and talk about some of the other like tools and upgrades that our casted characters gets like throughout the games, and sometimes they recur in other forms of media, most times they don't.
I was thinking we kind of picked the corresponding weapon of one of our main characters, Amy, admittedly. There are other, like, not necessarily weapons, but objects or equipment or vehicles that some other main characters utilize, and I kind of want to delve deeper into those.
Ooh, yeah, that could be fun.
And I've got an idea.
Ooh.
And I'll tell you after the episode ends.
Oh boy. So thank you guys so much for listening to the LoreX podcast. My name is Lycos Lore. You can find me mixing games together over on YouTube.
And I'm Cameron with an X, video game mixologist over on Twitch and YouTube, mixing up drinks and whatnot inspired by our favorite video game characters, concepts, and more. Better get out of here, y'all, or I am going to bust your Piko.